listening to Turning Hard Times into Good Times with your host, Jay Taylor. If you have a question or comment about today's show, Jay would love to hear from you at 1-866-472-5790. That's 1-866-472-5790. You can also send an email to questionsfortaylor@gmail.com. That's questions, the number 4, Taylor@gmail.com. Now, back to our program.
Welcome to this special segment of Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor, and I'm here with Peter Tallman to record an interview because of a press release Peter put out on behalf of Klondike Gold, announcing some very high-grade gold drill results, some intercepts pulled from the Nugget Zone on the company's 576 square kilometer Klondike district scale property in the Yukon. Now, Peter was scheduled to be with me live on August 13th, but because I believe the announcement made this morning may be a game changer for the company and its shares, I felt that you should hear from Peter sooner rather than later regarding this event, so that as much as possible we can all gain an understanding of the significance of the company's of this press release in terms of the company's shares and future prospects. The drill intercept that has caused me to do this special interview was a relatively shallow 1-meter intercept that graded an astounding 1,035 grams per ton gold with a bit of frosting on the cake in the form of 1,035 grams of silver per ton. We don't want to overestimate the importance of this one drill intercept, but neither do we want to underestimate what it might mean for the future of the exploration of this very, very huge mineralized system in the Yukon. And so I'm really glad to have Peter with me today. He is the president and CEO and a director of Klondike Gold. Thanks for joining me, Peter.
Jay, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and it's especially a pleasure when you have exciting news like the news that you announced this morning. The last time that we had you on our show, I think you thought you had a pretty good idea of where high-grade gold was hosted on the project. You know, it's over the last, 3 or 4 years or so, you've been studying this project and getting a better idea as you continue to learn more. And you had a pretty good idea based on the structural patterns on the project where you might find some high-grade jewelry like gold-hosted mineralization. Hole 19267 is the hole that graded this astounding 1,035 grams per ton gold. And then, of course, part of that also was a 2.5 gram intercept that graded 404 grams of gold and 415 grams of silver. That was, within that was that 1,035 grams of gold. One drill hole we know doesn't make a mine, but how much stock should investors put in this drill hole?
Well, just to recap that a bit, it's 1,009 grams gold and 1,035 grams silver over
right.
1 meter. That's by any definition a world-class intercept. It's maybe the second best drilled of any sort, including production holes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
As I'm compiling it. That's still a work in progress, but from the Olympics point of view, this is a gold or silver medal contender mm-hmm. for the year. So it's a new discovery hole as well, which is really exciting because mm-hmm. we've been drilling the Nugget Zone, which, as you said, we had begun to think could have jewelry box type mineralization. And we had an idea, a structural idea of where we could go within this multi-kilometer long target to test it. As it turns out, I'm not actually certain that we learned anything more about the structure, but mm-hmm. we did prove definitively that this thing can have it can have high grade in it anyway. And so whatever, the equivalent, I think it's 35 ounces of gold and 35 ounces of silver over a meter.
Yeah, it's crazy.
The thing that you said, though, is like, okay, is it a one-off kind of thing? We just released 9 drill holes, mm-hmm. Of which this is clearly a phenomenal hole and the best of the lot. The next best is 8.9 grams over 10 meters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in the nugget zone, so it's not this new discovery that lies just a little bit below it. That's the nugget zone itself. And then there was a third hole in there that ran 2 grams over 50 meters.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all this drilling is in a short span. They're all very short holes. It's all near surface gold over a length of 200 meters. And so just looking at the shape of it, it looks like, again, it's on surface. We can get in there with the backhoe if we ever get to that stage. It's not out of reach of something. It's not super deep. It's it's at surface.
Yeah.
And so that has some implications for exploration here. It's only a tiny little postage stamp of an enormous property where we have multiple targets of many kilometers of this style of mineralization.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess for your listeners, for you, I'm it's been 5 years of geoscience and ciphering and accumulating the knowledge to be able to get to the point where we can drill a hole that it is an absolute fortuitous hole to hit something that high, but it's a proof of concept, and I know it's going to get everybody's attention.
Mm-hmm. Well, for sure. And, as I look over, I believe you did a 12-hole, you've drilled 12 holes here on the Nugget Zone, and you've reported on 9 of them, is that right? And will you have the remaining 3 relatively soon? How soon do you expect them?
I think so. It's become a shotgun. In point of fact, the lab flagged the hole that with the samples with the gold in it, and so we prioritize them over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, to answer your question, then I don't know what's in the queue in terms of what's in line.
Okay. All right, but anyway, the point is, as I cast my eye over the drill holes that you've got, you mentioned the 3 top ones, but I mean, every one of them that you put out here have mineralization in them, some of them lower grade and so forth. So, I mean, it's going to be really interesting to sort of get a sense, when you're able to get a sense of what the potential mining widths might be and what the grades will be. Obviously, it's way too early to know that yet, I guess. But do you have a sense when you might be able to, I mean, will you be looking to do any kind of a resource on this exciting new zone? Or I know you're working on building ounces on your project, but can you give us an idea of what the schedule might be in terms of of building a resource? And also, I mean, you mentioned this is only 200 meters over a total, I believe, perhaps something like potentially something like 8 kilometer strike on this zone. Do I have that right?
So 8 kilometers is the fault zone, or the fault that we can see. We have gold mineralization in outcrop, which is the nugget zone, over 2.2 or 2.5 kilometers, one of the two. And so all of that needs to be drilled. We basically spent most of our drilling on the 200-meter sections that we're reporting now. So it's wide open with lots of gold in it.
What do you expect to do next? I know there are other areas that you wanted to drill this summer. Where will you be drilling next this summer?
Well, we have started in June or late May, and we are continuing to drill. And so the drill is currently, it has moved off of Nugget, and it's on Lone Star. And that really was the investment thesis for the year, was Lone Star we are drilling for a resource on Lone Star.
Mm-hmm.
What we're trying to do, we've drilled it over a kilometer. What we need more, and so we're trying to drill 1 more kilometer, an extra, so to basically double the size of the mineralization at Lone Star, so that we can move on towards doing a resource at Lone Star. That's one target. Nugget, in our sections, in one of the sections that's in the news release, or it's published with the news release today, it shows a big blog of mineralization. That's the Nugget Zone, and the Nugget Zone is easily drillable and estimatable for resources. But I don't want to do something over 200 meters. It needs more scope. We need to go along strike. So I mean, everything, all the objective we're doing here is we're drilling for exploration, but we're doing it in such a manner that it's easily incorporated into a resource estimate if we get to that stage.
Yeah.
And I would say it's coming sooner rather than later. How's that?
I like that. Do you expect then, getting back to the Lone Star, do you expect to be able to drill out that extra kilometer this year?
Not fully.
Not fully.
But we're gonna try. We're trying to get the strike, like the furthest hole drilled that hits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping is a kilometer.
Mm-hmm.
It's physically a tough area to drill in, so it takes a while to develop drill pads and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at least be able to say to the market, you know, we've successfully extended this mineralized horizon some length.
Yeah.
And hopefully it's still open.
Right.
So that basically gives us a whole lot of work to do next year.
Well, Peter, it seems to me that everything you're drilling so far, that the mineralization comes either at or very near the surface. I think that's true. You said at Nugget. It's also true at Lone Star. So you should be able to, relatively inexpensively then, actually step out and give an idea of what the size of this thing might be, I guess. And
we can drill a lot of everything, like this 1,000. Well, all the drilling at Nugget is within 75 meters of surface. All the drilling at Lone Star is all the mineralization is also within 75 meters of surface. Big widths over, broad widths anyway,
mm-hmm.
Means that it's really not. There's lots of mineralization above it,
mm-hmm.
And it's all mineralized at surface. So
mm-hmm.
it's easy, it's quick. And we're one of the the cheapest explorers in cost in the Yukon, and one of the cheapest in Canada.
Peter, do you expect these zones run to depth, knowing what you know about the geology of this project so far?
Yes, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. But obviously you're going to go along strike now. That's would be the obvious.
Well, I mean, there's two things. Number one, it's cheap. It costs $10,000 to drill a 100-meter hole on an angle
mm-hmm.
that's intersecting surface mineralization. If I step back and I'd need to drill an 800-meter hole to get 500 meters vertically, and that would cost $150,000. So it's
mm-hmm.
$10,000 versus $150,000 in cost.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there's the time it takes,
sure.
5 days. It's just not efficient.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense.
And the gold is at surface, so
right,
I don't need to drill.
No, obviously. Peter, you talked about two different styles of mineralization on this project in the past. Earlier on, you were talking about sort of, I think, a more disseminated style that was akin to the coffee project that Goldcorp bought in your backyard, actually. And then, as you started honing in on some of this higher grade stuff, you talked about the pogo style mineralization. Has your thinking changed at all on that, on either of those types of mineralizations? That of course, it's such a large project. Again, you could have more than one style of mineralization, I would think, and possibly more than one gold deposit on this, on this massive project.
My thinking is getting probably more refined. Lone Star looks very, very, very similar in style, at least, to coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And the Nugget quartz vein, effectively, if you call it that
mm-hmm.
immediately sounds very, very much like pogo.
Mm-hmm.
What I would say, though, is that these two, the two styles of mineralization are end members of the same gold mineralizing event.
Mm-hmm.
And in particular, this 1,000, the kilo over a meter in both gold and silver at Nugget is in a form that's disseminated. It's not a quartz vein.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really, really interesting, because that could potentially be the link in terms of how to reconcile one style with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need. I don't know to answer your question, but we have a lot of questions that we need to answer, and I think we're really on the right track.
I'm wondering if at the nugget zone with those kind of high grades, if you might not have a real nugget challenge or a challenge in terms of statistically appraising the resource, and maybe you need to do some bulk sampling or something, possibly?
I would think that right now the nugget factor is our biggest business risk. It's definitely there. We have been over the last month or so doing some kind of super detailed sampling on surface, so you'll be hearing about that in the future as to the results. But physically, what we find these quartz veins, we do channel saw, we cut them with a saw every meter, and you can see lots of visible gold, and the saw itself kind of smears it, so it highlights it. And then we drill one hole underneath it and appreciate that, the diamond drill hole is only like 2 inches in diameter, and you see the quartz veins, but you don't see any gold. And in many cases, we don't get a good assay, and it might be 100 ppb, it might be a gram, whatever. Yeah. That's not representative. The low grade isn't representative of the gold content in the quartz vein. By the same token, I don't think that the 1,000 grams over a meter is representative either. And the answer is I have no idea really what the true grade here is, but we are trying to take steps to figure that out, and bulk sampling ultimately will be all roads lead there. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's a very exciting program. I think you're fully funded for the rest of this year to finance your program. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. And we would still have, with the budgeted amount, we still have $2 million in the kitty at the end of the year.
And how long can you drill up there yet? How much longer?
End of September.
And then I guess what you'll do is pull all the data together that you gather from this summer's program and start to plan for 2020.
Well, we're already ripping our hair out with the data that we've got so far. We've had a lot of it come in, and some of our previous news releases from the regional perspective have shown us, we have lots of targets to go look at. And how to apply all these regional information to like Nugget and what we just drilled. We have LiDAR as an example, and there's a structure that runs through Nugget on the LiDAR data that we've never seen before. So there's the things that we're, while it's challenging because we don't have an infinite staff that can deal with this, but when we get a chance, we peek at it and go, let's go here and see. So it's happening while we're drilling. And then this winter will be another massive compilation, and we'll come out next year. We have a budget for next year to begin drilling anyway, and we'll have, I hope we have super good targets to test right off the bat next year too.
Well, I have an idea, Peter, that if the market responds to this kind of news, you may be able to afford one or two assistants to help you with some of this work going forward, and that might speed things up a little bit. The market might actually demand that, I would guess, because you've got so much to look at, and it's very, very exciting. You were really the first geologist to systematically and using up-to-date technology explore this, what many thought would be the mother lode of this massive placer deposit that was discovered in the late 1800s, the Klondike Gold placer deposit. And so it looks like your hard work is starting to bear some fruit. It's really exciting. Just in wrapping up here, I'm wondering if you could give our listeners what they should be looking out for then, what drivers that might be important to the share price people should be paying attention to now from now on till the end of the year.
I have no idea. I'm extremely excited by the discovery. It's like, okay, 5 years of effort has come through. It is proven. We have been able to prove from the Klondike era the sources of 3 different creeks now out of the 24 major producers. So, and Nugget is the source of one of them. And so, everything that we've done so far has been extremely successful. I actually happen to agree with your guess. The market is going to demand that we get bigger and we do things faster. Until now, we've been constrained by share price. Like the share price would always come back in the winter when we're financing, and I'm anticipating that is not going to be the case now, and we'll be able to, basically raise money for next year or whatever, who knows, and accelerate the program, which is kind of what I'm looking at right now.
But you'll have some drill results coming out between now and the end of the year, and some other news, I'm sure, right?
We have a lot. So this is only the first 9 holes out of, we're going to drill about 60 or
Okay.
70. So there's
right.
another 60 to come.
Okay. In batches, I guess, probably, right?
Yes.
In batches. Okay. Excellent, Peter. Thank you so much for taking the time to update us on this very exciting press release that you put out this morning, and we'll look forward to chatting with you again when you have some more exciting news, hopefully exciting, positive news.
I look forward to the news and look forward to chatting to you again.
All right, Peter, all the best to you and your team.
Take care.